He claimed it wasn't him. That something darker, something unholy, had taken control. The knife in his hand wasn't his. The blood on his clothes wasn't his. And yet, the law demanded a name. One name. His name. But what if the killer really wasn't the one to blame? What if the devil himself sat in the defendant's chair? This is the possession defense, when killers blame the devil. Viewer discretion is advised. Chapter 1, Origins of the Possession Defense. Throughout history, the line between madness and evil has always been thin. In courts across the world, desperate defendants have pointed not to insanity, not to impulse, but to a darker force, possession. A force that, they claimed, compelled them to commit acts they could never explain, and could never undo. In the 17th and 18th centuries, religious courts often accepted possession as a genuine cause. But in modern law, this defense is almost unheard of, almost. And when it appears, it captures attention, fear, and disbelief in equal measure. The possession defense, or as it's often sensationalized, the devil made me do it defense, isn't a formal legal strategy you'd find in a textbook. It's a variation of the insanity plea, where the defendant argues they lacked the mental capacity to understand their actions were wrong. But instead of attributing this to a recognized mental illness, they point to a supernatural entity. This creates an immediate clash. The legal system is built on tangible evidence and rational analysis. It deals in facts, witnesses, and forensics. How can it possibly contend with an argument that a demon, an entity beyond human comprehension, is the true perpetrator? It's a question that has baffled legal scholars, captivated the public, and pushed the boundaries of what a courtroom can and cannot accept as reality. The defense forces a jury to confront not just the facts of the case, but their own deepest beliefs about good, evil, and the nature of the human soul. And in a few rare, shocking instances, it has been put to the test. Chapter 2, The Devil Made Me Do It, Arne Cheyenne Johnson. The most infamous American case began in 1981 in Brookfield, Connecticut. Arne Cheyenne Johnson, a 19-year-old man, stabbed his landlord to death. But this wasn't a simple act of rage. Johnson claimed he was possessed, that during an exorcism performed on a family friend, the demon transferred into him. The story began months earlier, centered on an 11-year-old boy named David Glatzel. David began exhibiting terrifying behavior, speaking in strange voices, reciting demonic literature, and developing unexplained scratches and bruises. His family, desperate and devoutly religious, believed he was under demonic attack. They enlisted the help of Ed and Lorraine Warren, famed paranormal investigators who had already gained notoriety for their work on cases like the Amityville Horror. The Warrens, along with several priests, conducted a series of exorcisms on young David. Present at one of these harrowing rituals was Arne Cheyenne Johnson, the boyfriend of David's older sister. According to witnesses, during one particularly violent session, Johnson taunted the entity, challenging it to leave the boy and enter him instead. Days later, David's condition seemingly improved, but Arne's began to deteriorate. He reportedly slipped into trances, growled, and experienced hallucinations. On February 16, 1981, during a heated argument with his landlord, Alan Bono, something snapped. Johnson pulled out a 5-inch pocket knife and stabbed Bono repeatedly, killing him. When arrested, Johnson was found walking in a daze, 2 miles from the scene, claiming to have no memory of the event. His defense attorney, Martin Minella, decided on a groundbreaking and controversial strategy, to plead not guilty by reason of demonic possession. The Warrens, famed paranormal investigators, testified to the court about the presence of the entity. Johnson's defense attorney tried to plead possession, but the judge refused. The trial became a media spectacle. Newspapers, television, even books, all whispered the same question: could evil truly take control of a human being? Judge Robert Callahan was unequivocal, stating that such a defense was impossible to prove and had no place in a court of law. He argued that allowing it would open a floodgate of similar, unverifiable claims. With the possession defense thrown out, the trial proceeded on the basis of self-defense, which was ultimately rejected by the jury. Johnson was convicted of first-degree manslaughter. And yet, the story didn't end in the courtroom. It lives on, in books, documentaries, and a film that terrified audiences worldwide, The Conjuring 3. The case remains a touchstone for debates about faith, science, and the law. Was Arne Johnson a victim of a demonic entity, a man suffering from an undiagnosed mental illness, or simply a killer looking for a way out? But Arne Johnson wasn't the first, nor the last, to make this claim. In 1991, in Philadelphia, another case pushed these boundaries. Michael Taylor, a religious man living in a small English town, brutally murdered his wife. Before the murder, Taylor's behavior had become increasingly erratic. He joined a Christian prayer group, but his conduct grew so extreme that even the group's leader became concerned. He would shout obscenities and speak in tongues, leading his wife and others to believe he was possessed. A marathon exorcism was conducted, lasting over 24 hours. The priests involved claimed to have cast out over 40 demons from Taylor. However, they warned him that one demon, the demon of murder, still lingered. Exhausted, they allowed him to go home to rest. It was a fatal mistake. Within hours, Taylor returned home, attacked his wife in a frenzy, and was found by police wandering the streets, covered in blood, shouting, "It is the blood of Satan." In court, Taylor pleaded not guilty on the grounds of insanity. His defense argued that his belief in possession was so absolute that it had rendered him legally insane at the time of the killing. The prosecution accepted the plea, and Taylor was sent to a secure hospital. He was released after just 2 years. The Michael Taylor case, unlike Arne Johnson's, saw the legal system acknowledge, in a way, the effect of the belief in possession, even if it didn't validate the possession itself. It was the defendant's state of mind, his shattered reality, that was on trial, not the devil. This subtle distinction is key to understanding how the possession defense functions, or fails, in a modern legal context. So where does this leave us? Is the devil made me do it defense just a desperate, last-ditch effort by guilty individuals? Or does it point to something more profound about the human psyche and our struggle to comprehend acts of extreme violence? From a psychological perspective, the concept of possession can be seen as a form of dissociative identity disorder or psychosis, where an individual's sense of self fractures under extreme stress or trauma. The demon becomes a separate personality, one that can bear the guilt and responsibility for heinous acts the primary personality cannot accept. It's a coping mechanism, albeit a terrifying and destructive one. This is why the insanity plea is the closest legal avenue. The law isn't equipped to judge the supernatural, but it is designed to assess a defendant's mental state. Was the person capable of understanding the nature and quality of their act? Did they know it was wrong? If their belief in possession is so powerful that it creates a delusional state, stripping them of this understanding, then they may be found not legally responsible. But for the public, and often for the jury, it's not that simple. These cases tap into ancient, primal fears. The idea that an external, malevolent force can hijack our bodies and turn us into monsters is a story we've been telling ourselves for millennia. It's the ultimate loss of control, the ultimate violation of the self. The Arne Johnson and Michael Taylor cases are more than just legal curiosities. They are modern-day morality plays, staged in the sterile environment of a courtroom. They force us to confront uncomfortable questions. Where is the line between mental illness and what ancient traditions called evil? When a person commits an unspeakable act, do we blame the mind, the soul, or something else entirely? The law provides one answer, an answer based on evidence, precedent, and the measurable state of the human brain. But for many, that answer feels incomplete. The whispers of possession, of a darker force at play, continue to echo long after the gavel has fallen. They remind us that for some mysteries, the courtroom has no final verdict. Chapter 3: The Tragedy of Anneliese Michel in Germany. During the 1970s, Anneliese Michel's story blurred faith, fear, and tragedy. It began not with fire and brimstone, but with something far more common, a medical diagnosis. As a teenager, Anneliese started experiencing seizures. Doctors diagnosed her with epilepsy. Later, as she entered university, a profound depression took hold. She heard voices, saw demonic faces, and developed a severe aversion to religious objects. The medical world saw a young woman suffering from a combination of epilepsy and severe psychiatric illness. But Anneliese, and her deeply devout Catholic family, saw something else entirely. They believed she was possessed. Their faith led them down a path that would ultimately end in heartbreak. Desperate for a spiritual solution, her parents bypassed medical advice and turned to the church. They sought out priests who would be willing to perform the ancient rite of exorcism. After initial hesitation, two priests, Ernst Alt and Arnold Renz, received permission from the local bishop to proceed. What followed was a descent into a living nightmare. Over the course of 10 months, a staggering 67 documented exorcism sessions were performed on Anneliese. Imagine the scene: a small, dark room, the air thick with incense and whispered prayers. A young woman, once vibrant, now emaciated and frail, is tied to a bed. She thrashes, screams in multiple voices, and contorts her body in ways that seem unnatural, inhuman. The priests chant Latin rites, battling what they believe to be a host of demons, including Lucifer, Cain, and even Hitler. Anneliese, caught in the crossfire of the spiritual war, refused food and water, believing that fasting would help expel the evil within her. Her body weakened. Her mind frayed. The sessions grew more intense, more violent. She broke her own teeth biting the walls, her knees fractured from countless genuflections. And in July 1976, at the age of just 23, Anneliese Michel died of malnutrition and dehydration. She weighed a mere 68 pounds. The world was shocked. Her parents and the two priests were charged with negligent homicide. The trial that followed became a global media sensation, a courtroom drama that pitted modern medicine against ancient faith. The prosecution argued that Anneliese was a mentally ill woman who was denied crucial medical treatment, her condition fatally exacerbated by the medieval rituals performed on her. They presented evidence of her epilepsy and psychosis. The defense, however, played audio tapes from the exorcisms, chilling recordings of guttural growls and demonic voices that seemed to defy rational explanation. They argued that the priests and parents genuinely believed they were fighting a spiritual battle for her soul. In the end, the court found them all guilty of negligent homicide but handed down suspended sentences. The verdict satisfied no one. It left the world with questions still debated today. Was Anneliese Michel truly possessed by demonic forces, a martyr in a spiritual war? Or was she a tragic victim of a severe, treatable mental illness, whose tormentors were simply blinded by their unshakable faith? Anneliese's story remains a haunting testament to the power of belief and the horrors that can arise when the line between faith and reality is completely erased. Chapter 4: Possession Defenses around the world. The chilling case of Anneliese Michel is perhaps the most famous, but it is far from the only instance where the spiritual and legal worlds have collided. From South Africa to Nigeria, modern courts occasionally face defendants claiming demonic control. These cases often create a complex legal maze, where contemporary law must grapple with local traditions, ancient folklore, and the remnants of colonial legal systems. Across the globe, people commit unspeakable acts, and then they claim a spirit, a demon, or a force beyond comprehension was in control. In parts of Africa, for example, belief in spirit possession is not a fringe idea, it's a deeply ingrained part of the cultural and spiritual landscape. When a crime is committed and the defendant claims they were possessed, the community may genuinely believe them. This puts the judicial system in an incredibly difficult position. Do they dismiss the claim as a superstitious fantasy, or do they acknowledge the powerful role such beliefs play in the defendant's community and, perhaps, their own psyche? In some instances, courts are forced to weigh psychiatric evaluations against eyewitness testimony of exorcisms or traditional healing rituals. Imagine a judge listening to a psychiatrist detail a defendant's history of schizophrenia, only to then hear testimony from village elders who swear they saw a demon being cast out of the person. Which testimony holds more weight? The scientific or the spiritual? In other cases, the law rejects the defense outright. Many legal systems, particularly those based on Western common law, have no room for the supernatural. The devil cannot be cross-examined. A demon cannot be put on the witness stand. And so, the defense is dismissed, and the defendant is judged based on their actions alone. And yet, the chilling question remains, what if the defendant truly wasn't in control? What if, for a moment, we set aside our modern, rational skepticism and consider the possibility? In 2014, in the United States, a case in Indiana drew national attention. A mother and her 3 children claimed their rental house was infested by over 200 demons. They reported bizarre, terrifying events, the children levitating, walking backward up a wall, speaking in deep, unnatural voices. A veteran police captain, a child protective services case manager, and even a local priest all witnessed these phenomena and were so disturbed they publicly corroborated the family's story. While no major crime was committed, the case highlights how experiences of a demonic nature can be terrifyingly real to those involved, even to seasoned, skeptical professionals. These defenses force us to confront the very limits of our legal framework. The law is built on the concept of mens rea, the guilty mind. It assumes that to be guilty of a crime, you must have intended to commit it. But if a person genuinely believes they were a puppet, their body hijacked by an evil entity, where does their responsibility begin and end? Is it a calculated lie to escape justice, a profound delusion born of mental illness, or something else entirely? The possession defense is rare. It is controversial. And it is terrifying. It taps into a primal fear that we are not entirely in control of ourselves, that some external, malevolent force could invade our minds and bodies, turning us into monsters. For every case documented in the courts, for every Anneliese, Michel, or Cheyenne Antoine, countless more stories go unreported, whispered about in communities, or confined to the journals of priests and paranormal investigators. Perhaps the devil doesn't need horns, a tail, or fire to exist. The true horror isn't in some cartoonish villain, but in the subtle, creeping loss of self. Perhaps he simply waits, in the cracks of our mind, in the corners of our belief, in the spaces where reason and faith violently collide. These cases show us that the battleground may not be some fiery underworld, but the fragile landscape of human consciousness itself. The most terrifying demons may be the ones we can't see, the ones that convince us we are not responsible for our own darkness. Was it madness, or was it evil? That is a question the law can never fully answer. The courtroom can pass a sentence, a judge can strike a gavel, but they cannot give us certainty. They cannot peer into the soul and know for sure what force was truly at the helm. And perhaps, it is a question we should all ask ourselves. Where do our own thoughts and impulses come from? And what would we do if we felt a darkness stirring within us that we couldn't control? If you felt chills while listening to these cases, comment "possessed" below. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? Subscribe for more stories that explore the darkest corners of reality and the human mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.